There is a verdict in the civil corruption trial involving longtime top National Rifle Association, or NRA, CEO Wayne LaPierre. A jury has ruled that LaPierre should pay the powerful gun rights group more than $4 million in damages for mismanagement and misspending. CNN's John Miller joins me now. John, walk us through this decision.
Well, the jury spent a good deal of time going over this because there were a lot of counts. Now, this is a civil case, not a criminal case, but what they found is that Wayne LaPierre owes the NRA $4.3 million on top of $1 million that they assess he has already paid back. That's the money he conceded that he owed. The jury also found cause to remove him as head of the NRA, even though he resigned just before this trial started. The judge will decide whether to permanently bar him from association with the NRA in a bench trial that will come up after this portion of the case. Wayne LaPierre did secure for himself a job as basically an outside advisor or consultant to the NRA, a paid role which the jury found was not something that made him guilty of self-dealing. But this has been an eye-opening case. In the closing remarks, the Assistant Attorney General, Monica Connell, summed it up by saying, "This case is about corruption, misuse of funds spent on jets, on black cars, five-star hotels, hundreds of thousands of dollars in suits, million-dollar deals to insiders, payments to loyal board members, and pervasive violations of internal controls." So LaPierre was obviously the key defendant in this civil case brought by the New York State Attorney General because, A, the NRA was founded in New York State 153 years ago as a nonprofit organization, and B, in New York State, the Attorney General has sway over nonprofit organizations because of the Attorney General's Charity Bureau. So this was basically the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, the same Attorney General who brought the civil case against Donald Trump and his business empire, calling the NRA onto the carpet and saying that it's essentially its management had turned the nonprofit organization into a personal piggy bank, to use her words.
I want to bring in Mike Spies, a senior writer with The Trace, which covers gun issues. Mike, your reaction to the verdict?
It's exactly what I expected to happen. Maybe the monetary amount was even higher than I thought it would be. But to me, this is also very much a case about greed, about not telling the truth to the people that you're taking money from, and about theater, about putting on a show for 30 years to bring in as much money as possible to enrich yourself and those around you, really, and while doing that, harming the country in the process.
What kind of impact do you think this verdict will have on the NRA, both in the short term and the long term?
I mean, I think the brand is greatly diminished. I mean, even before the verdict came in, the last few years have just been brutal. Members have dropped out. Its entire communications infrastructure has been gone for several years. And I think that it's going to be impossible for it to ever regain the status that it once had. And now what you're going to see is a sort of gun rights movement, and the organizations that represent it kind of splinter into a lot of different groups that are going to focus more on lawsuits, overturning regulations, and that kind of thing.
What kind of role did Wayne LaPierre have in transforming the NRA from what it was once, which was, an organization for hunters and sportsmen, into a powerful lobbying organization opposing virtually any kind of limit or control on gun ownership, which is what it is today?
He was the projection of Oz, while behind the curtain being a very timid, fearful man who was playing a role. But that role that he played was transformative, in that he was leading like what I would call a tribal war. He was at the forefront of the culture wars. And it was under his leadership that the organization became a Second Amendment absolutist group, was not interested in compromise, wanted to be as divisive as possible in order to perpetually fuel the outrage machine that allowed them to continue to raise more and more money For what? For, of course, self-enrichment and for bloated contracts and for people to live lifestyles that would be utterly unimaginable to the vast majority of NRA members who have paid their dues.
John Miller, final thoughts?
Well, the question is, what happens to the NRA? They will be getting $4 million back, but what will their future be? And that is probably going to be a very different NRA, both in their politics and their message.